You know what's funny?
What?
This.
What's
Well,
funny?
actually, it's not so funny as it
you
is
find the word?
interesting. I found it.
Okay.
There was a interesting article that I was reading, and this was about how China's pet population has absolutely exploded, right? Something that we saw kind of happening towards the end.
Yeah.
People started to not rely on dogs as like a guard dog for their farm or something, and more keep pets as like a luxury, right?
Well, I think you saw in the urban areas, dogs were never very popular in urban areas, except for the occasional person would have like one of those teddy bear dogs or a Siberian husky for whatever reason. But yeah, it was a thing. But in the urban areas, it took a long time for people to accept that.
But the prices have come down so much that the average person can afford like a dog, right? And it's because there's tons of breeding mills now. It's all over the place in China, right?
Right.
The problem is that people are now, with the uncertainty of China's economy, are looking at pets and dogs as a replacement for children. And that is an absolute nightmare. I'd like to show you a little graph here.
Sure.
If you look at the demographic collapse that we're seeing China go through, and a lot of experts have been talking about this for a long time now. We're looking at in 2016, when China actually got rid of the one-child policy, the birth rates were not that bad, which is ironic, right?
Yeah.
They get rid of it, and the birth rates tank. They're like, wait a minute. All this time, I was only able to have one kid, right? People are breaking the rules. They're paying the fine to have more kids, right? But when economic uncertainty crept up, they're like, I don't know. In this economy, I don't think I'm going to be having a kid, right?
Yeah.
We're at negative birth rate now in China. It's one of the lowest in the entire world, which is a nightmare because now you have, and again, if you're new here, you might not know this, we have millions, hundreds of millions of old people that need to be looked after because there's no social safety nets in China.
Yeah.
There's no state welfare that takes care of this thing at a reasonable level, right?
Yeah.
And you need to have the young people grow up to take care of the elderly people. And now you don't have that anymore.
No.
You just don't have anybody to replace.
You also
those
need
old
the young
people.
workforce to generate taxes to pay for social,
Social
although like
programs.
very few people in China pay taxes.
Well, yeah,
I don't
it's
know how
kind
that
of like-
works.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's weird.
Anyway, long story short, the
Mm-hmm.
birth rate's so bad, and now people have found meaningful alternative in getting pets, right?
Yes.
Not to say pets are a replacement for children, but in a lot of people's minds, they're
Mm-hmm.
like, well, this is a viable option now. A dog is cheap compared to raising a child.
Sure.
And the government's scrambling. They're trying all these incentives in the local villages and towns to get people to have more kids. We think, and we made a prediction, that in the near future, they're actually going to start forcing people to have children.
Yes. Young couples are probably going to be like, if you don't have a kid by
You'll be
X, Y,
fine.
Z, you're going to be fine. And then they might even resort to artificial insemination.
Something. We think it will maybe get to that point.
Yes.
Because it's that dire.
We keep saying this, but during the one-child policy, they forced abortion. So if they can force people to have an abortion, they can enforce insemination too.
Anchor pugs.
Anchor pugs.
Anchor babies.
Yeah. Here's the thing, guys. I don't think anybody really realizes how expensive China can be.
Yes.
Okay, everybody that I met, every foreigner that I ever met that went to China would say like, oh, China's so cheap, right? And they get to China and yeah, food's cheap, beer's cheap, like things that you would expect to be quite expensive in the West, like certain things, rent is cheap. But you got to go buy yourself a new laptop or something, and you think China makes everything, right? So it's going to be cheap. You get a sticker shock because that stuff is much more expensive than buying it overseas.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if you wanted to buy an iPhone or something, it costs way more in China than, even though they're made there,
Yeah.
it costs way more in China than if you bought it in America or the UK or something, right?
Sure.
Certain things are incredibly expensive. Owning a car in China is astronomically expensive. Like, I'm a car guy. I thought I could get to China, buy a cheap car and drive around. No. The license plate alone, to get the license plate, is more than you would pay for a car overseas. Even a new car. They're so expensive. You have to pay for parking everywhere. You have to pay for using every road, every highway, every mile on the highway you pay for, right? Every freeway in the country you pay for. Every day when you park your car, if it's at a restaurant, if it's at your home, if it's at a business, you pay for that parking on top of everything. So owning a car is astronomically expensive, way more than anywhere else in the world I've ever been to. And then having a child is astronomically expensive too. It's off the charts because of this one-child policy. It ruined it, right? So now you have this big competition. You only have one child, and this child has to support you in your old age.
Yeah.
Okay? So you have to make sure that that child has the best chance of getting the best job.
Yes.
To earn the most amount of money to pay for your retirement. because there's no social programs.
No.
The kid has to basically look after you. So when you get too old, your child needs to be earning top dollar to look after you. So what do? Spend every last cent that you have on their education. After school education, make sure they're learning piano, they're learning advanced math, they're learning whatever. They're learning English, they're learning different languages. It's so expensive to raise a child, much more than you would expect. And so people realize now there's like, oh, you can have as many kids as you want. And they were just tired. They're like, listen,
had enough of this.
It's too expensive to raise a child.
Yeah.
Forget about it. Because it's way too expensive. As soon as you have a child in China, forget about it. You're working yourself to the bone just to ensure that child's doing well. Sure. And a lot of people were thinking, hey, what if I just work and save the money, then I can look after myself in retirement?
Yeah, for sure. China opts out of international blueprint to stop AI race and weapons development. I want to read this. This is
what a surprise. They're like, no, actually, we kind of want to do that.
China this week chose not to sign onto an international blueprint agreed by some 60 nations, including the U.S. This is the military country, right?
Sure,
US,
sure.
that look to establish guardrails when employing artificial intelligence for military use. More than 90 nations attended the Responsible Artificial Intelligence Military Domain Summit hosted in South Korea on Monday and Tuesday, though roughly a third of the attendees did not support the non-binding proposal. So 60 did, right?
Yes.
AI expert Arthur Herman, senior fellow and director of Quantum Alliance Initiative with the Hudson Institute, told Fox News Digital that the fact that some 30 nations opted out of this is an important development in the race to develop AI is not necessarily a cause for concern. Though, in Beijing's case, it is likely because of the general opposition to signing multilateral agreements. And that was the most important thing, because I read this headline and I was like, well, of course, they're going to use AI to
what are they going to use?
In my mind, the Chinese government's always going to have the most malintent when it comes to AI development, right?
Yeah.
Turns out, China doesn't like to sign multinational agreements anyway, right? The reason being, they always feel like it's some way to stifle them in some way.
No, I think it's like, because then they have to think about how they're going to break the rules.
Well, exactly. So the expert here said, it's in an effort to stifle China's AI prowess or AI developments and stuff. Then the rule makers, right? This is how I took it. The rule makers, like the U.S. or the people that came up with these ideas, they'll be the ones to be like, well, nope, you're using this AI technology for military use now, so now you can't do it anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you don't sign that agreement, then you're not beholden to anything. That's the way I read it.
Sure.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's no surprise.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Huh?
Oh.
Now, that's not something you're expecting.
No. That's kind of like it was too good.
Boom.
Huh?
What?
That's gotta be deliberate. Doesn't it look so deliberate? Whoa!
Okay. Fail time.
Whoa, that guy's surfing.
That's like he's windsurfing. Don't stand on your dad's desk or whatever.
Wait. 1 and 2.
Close my eyes, I can almost see it. When I take a breath, you fill up my lungs. And if my mind